I'm Auntie Jackie, or Nathaniel's great aunt. He expressed interest in having me do this video for him to tell about our family ancestry. So here we go. We come from two of the biggest and oldest families on the islands of Antigua and Barbuda. That's in the Caribbean, Leeward Islands. We are descended from African slaves and Portuguese settlers. Information before the island, unfortunately, we do not have, but I can definitely tell you that it was an English colony, and once slavery was abolished in 1834, the English hold on the island weakened, which allowed for Portuguese settlers to come in and try and make their fortune. I do not know how long it took before the first two marriages that pretty much started our family took place, but I do know it was somewhere in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Our oldest known ancestor is a young Portuguese woman by the name of Margaret, who married a black African male. His first name is unknown, but she did take his last name, which was West. Margaret and her husband would be Nathaniel's great grandparents. They died at a young age, but not before having 5 children, the youngest of which was your great grandmother, Edna West. Edna married a man by the name of Brent Barzee. They had one child named Maudlin West Barzee. Maudlin married Rupert Joseph, and together they had 5 children, of which your grandmother, Sharon, was the third born. Sharon then had your mother, Natasha, who had you. For the other side of the coin, the Joseph name, the oldest known ancestors for the Joseph side is Hilton and Nancy Joseph. Hilton was a child of a biracial marriage, also between a Portuguese male and a black African female. Hilton and Nancy were your great grandparents. Together, they had 13 children, of which your great-grandfather, Rupert Joseph, was the youngest. From there, you pretty much know the rest. They had your grandmother had your mother, who had you. So how did we go from living in Antigua to living in the United States? I'll tell you. You come from a long line of people who, they just never give up, no matter how hard it gets. So basically, they kept working, no matter what, always dreaming of something better. Your great-grandmother used to say, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. So it's good that you're doing this project. Hello, I'm Jacqueline Hargret. I am Nathaniel's great aunt, and I'm here to answer some questions on his behalf. Our traditions and cultures have been passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth and also by actions. By word of mouth, I mean we actually tell stories to our children that were told to us by our ancestors. And by actions, I mean that we teach them arts and crafts that were taught to us by our parents before, and along with cultural recipes. The two broader historical and cultural contexts that affect our family was the abolition of slavery and the independence of Antigua and Barbuda from the British Commonwealth. In 1834, slavery was abolished in Antigua and Barbuda. This allowed for blacks to have the freedom to a family that could not be sold, and also the right to own land. Little more changed on the island, however, since Britain still held power over the countries. When the islands became independent in 1981, it meant that Britain no longer had a hold on the countries, which were free to make their own laws and elect the first black prime minister for Antigua and Barbuda, which was V.C. Byrd. Your great-great-grandmother, Nancy Joseph, was born without the use of her legs. She spent her life dealing with constant ridicule from her community. She overcame her physical disabilities, however, to marry a wonderful man and raise 13 children with him. She used her arms for legs and took great care of her family. Your great-great-grandmother, Edna West, lost her parents also at a young age, and so as to help support her family, used to go to work in the sugarcane fields and cotton fields in the morning, and then in the later part of the day would attempt to get somewhat of an education so she could learn to read and write. She was known as the first female businesswoman in the family. She bought and sold land and even became a landlord. She was actually a major stepping stone in our family migrating to the United States. I would say that our family has learned to be assertive, flexible, respectful, and open-minded towards other people and their cultures. I truly do not believe that we would have survived the changes in our environment without those traits. People in our family that have accomplished great things are your great-great-grandmothers, Edna and Nancy, your great-grandfather, Rupert Joseph, who became a master welder and actually was the first in her family to work on airplanes. Your great-grandmother, Mother Joseph, who was the first to actually finish high school. You also have several cousins who are serving in the United States military and have served in the United States military. And we have several college graduates in our family as well. For the future, I envision that you guys are going to be able to enjoy all the advantages offered to you, regardless of what country you live in. Our family's legacy for just basically never giving up and remembering that there's always a way to turn a disadvantage to your advantage is key to that survival. There is a hill on the island of Antigua called Shirley Heights, which is not only a landmark for the country, but also for our family as well. This hill actually offers a 360-degree view of the area of English Harbor, which is the village. And from Shirley Heights, you can actually see all of the land that our ancestors used to live on. And some of them actually still live there today. Lessons and values. The lessons and values I hope are carried on to the next generation are to, one, never forget that an education is precious. There was actually a time when we weren't even allowed to learn how to read or write. So every opportunity that our future generation gets to just learn, I think that would be amazing. So I hope they know and learn that it's important to get a proper education. I also hope that they learn or know that they should never judge others by their looks. Our family has thrived because we kept an open mind to meeting new people and learning about other cultures. A story of resilience. I am thinking of a story of your great-great-grandmother, Edna West. As a child, she told me pretty much that she used to have to walk to the market early in the mornings. So she used to wake up at around 3 a.m. and she had about a 3-hour walk just to get to the market to sell her wares. So one morning she woke up and decided pretty much that she was gonna get packed and head out for the day. Everything was still dark, of course, because it's around 3:30 a.m. And as she's walking outside, bear in mind that back then there were no light posts on the road. Pretty dark out there. And the only thing on the sides of the roads were sugarcane fields. So as she got to a crossroad in the village of All Saints, she heard a pretty loud howl, she said, and she could hear the sound of hooves coming towards her. At that point, she stopped walking and started to listen. And off to her left, she actually said that she saw what looked like white legs, very long white legs, underneath what was a very dark silhouetted body. At that point, she saw them thundering towards her. So she ran. She dropped everything and ran to the nearest house. Unfortunately, it was still a little ways off the house and it was up a hill. As she got closer to the house, she realized that the sound of the hooves was right upon her and there was no way she was going to make it to the front door. So there was a small house or shed or something, she said, that was closer to her than the actual main home. And back then, the houses were built up on blocks and bricks rather than the actual flat foundation that we have now. So she crawled underneath and got to the middle and pretty much stayed there while she heard the howling and the clattering of hooves going around and round this little building. She said she uttered every single prayer that she could think of to God because, quite frankly, she thought she was being chased by what was called a sukiya. Now, a sukiya is a fabled beast from our island, which is supposedly half animal and half man. Your grandmother said she stayed there and she could feel the heat given off from this monster, and she was laying in ants and everything, getting bitten up all over her body, but she knew to exit from underneath that house pretty much would mean her death. So she laid there getting eaten by insects, feeling hot, miserable, terrified, until finally, almost near daybreak, the thing took off and left her alone. At that point, the people who were in the house, the main house, opened the door and yelled at her to run and come in, which is what she did, and they locked the doors and pretty much stayed in there until the sun was high in the sky. Apparently, they heard the noise. They saw she was being chased, but could not help her because they didn't have anything to defend her with. As I got older, the true story came out, which pretty much was she was being chased by English soldiers on horses that were using dogs to track any black people who were out before sunrise, because it was against the law for blacks to leave their homes after sundown on the island. Had they caught your grandmother out at that time, they would have done horrible things to her. And you probably wouldn't have a grandmother right now, and we probably wouldn't have existed. So I said that was quite a story of resilience on her part, because even though she wanted to tell me the story of what happened, she told it in a way that a little kid would understand, not to go out at night because it wasn't safe. After that happened to her, being a single woman at that time, she still had to care for herself, so she still went out to sell her wares, but she did it in a smarter way. She joined a group of people who were doing it. That way she had safety in numbers from then on. Let's see. I believe you had a few more questions. How does it feel? To me, it feels pretty amazing. Our family comes from so many different places, and it goes so far back, further back than any of us can remember. Do I wish we had a way of getting all of that documentation so we can go back to our very beginnings? Yes. But at the moment, it's not possible. But just learning from the generations that were on the island coming forward to now feels pretty awesome. And thanking people, well, of course, I have to thank your great uncle and aunts, that includes your grandma, for all the information and things they've taught me. Without them, I wouldn't have known anything about our family. So it is very important, even if it's verbally, for us to pass on this information to each other. And I hope I answered all your questions. Thanks.